back down and shut your trap. It's time for
Keeping It Sports with M3.
Are you ready?
Are you ready?
Well, I'll need some beer.
Are you ready?
You have to ask me nicely.
Come on now, don't be bashful.
Are you ready? Are you ready for
Place for the best sports talk and news surrounding each league.
I can prove it with my usual flawless logic.
Hey man, this time we're gonna do it my way.
What's your name again?
And now, here's your host, M3, Mike Rosansky. Coming to you from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. It's time. We're Keeping It Sports with M3, powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're all doing well today on this Monday, the 10th day of October. As you can probably tell by now, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge for yours truly's voice today, just based on the fact that I think I damn near came close to blowing out over the weekend between attending a WWE event in Philadelphia on Saturday night and then the Jets game at MetLife Stadium yesterday. I was worried that my voice was going to be pretty much fried coming into today, but going to give it my best try here, going to give it my best effort. You know, a lot better effort than the New York Mets did in their wild card series over the weekend. And I hate to phrase it like that because, you know, every time I talk about bad things about the Mets, I think it sometimes comes across as me being a jerk, me being, you know, mean old Yankee fan looking down at the poor little Mets fans. But there's no other way to describe this past weekend other than embarrassing, a gut punch, and extremely, extremely disappointing. Because one of the arguments I always hate in sports, with any team, with any fan base, especially fan bases who are not used to seeing their teams in the postseason. And it's usually, we don't see a lot of times where the Mets are in the playoffs in back-to-back years. It's happened very frequently in their franchise's history, and usually there's years in between postseason appearances. And the last time they were in it before this year was the 2016 wild card game with Connor Gillespie hitting the 3-run bomb off of Jeurys Familia. So it's been a little while. But there's always this argument from portions of a fan base after a gut punch, after a heartbreak like this, of saying, oh, but think back to your thoughts on your team in the beginning of the season, and if I told you that they were going to win 101 games and be in the postseason at the end of the year, you'd be pretty happy. No, I've always been against that kind of argument because you have to change your expectations based on, or your feelings on something based on what you're seeing in front of you. You can't just go with your same old preseason philosophy. That's why, you know, I look back at the 2017 Yankees and how they weren't predicted to do anything. And then, you know, you fast forward at the end of the year, I was heartbroken when they lost that ALCS to the Houston Astros. And that's the same way any Met fan should and probably does feel today, because this is, you know, expectations were risen based on how this season went. The fact that for 175 of the 180 days of this Major League Baseball season, the Mets held the lead in the National League East. At times, there were some people that were arguing, oh, could they end up being the best team in Major League Baseball? And that was coming at a time, remember, when they were without Max Scherzer for almost 2 months with the oblique. They didn't have Jacob deGrom for the first 3.5 months of the season due to the injuries from last year. And it seemed like no matter what happened, this Mets team just kept rolling along. They had that big 10.5 game lead on June 1st that slowly but surely it dissipated. It went away because the Atlanta Braves just turned into a runaway freight train, turned into a team that was winning 75% of their games, winning games at a clip that if they did it over the course of a full season, won 114 games. And it forced the Mets, with last weekend's heartbreak and embarrassment in Atlanta, to now have to do something that I'm sure them and no other Mets fans and no fans in general want to see their team do. Yeah, you want to make the playoffs, but when you have that kind of lead in your division for so long, you want to avoid this wild card format as much as you possibly can. Because even though you had all 3 games at home, it didn't fluster the San Diego Padres. It didn't fluster them coming 3,000 miles away. It didn't fluster the fact that they were the road team, the team that would not have last ups all 3 nights in this series. And, maybe we should look back on the regular season and see why. This team, even though they only played 6 times, was clearly better than the Mets during the regular season. They won the regular season series. So it shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone that the San Diego Padres won this series. They are a very good team. They have players that the Mets don't have. They have a Manny Machado. They have a Juan Soto. Who on the Mets is on that level? Who on the Mets is at that caliber? Lindor and Alonso are good, but outside of their home runs on Saturday night, they did nothing in this series. They were MIA for the most part. But that's the story of the second half of the 2022 New York Mets. That is the story of how these last 3 months since the trade deadline boils down. Because they've been a team that, they'll have that one big explosive night during a week, but then have to win the rest of their games based on their pitchers throwing gems. And for the second straight weekend, you had your rotation lined up the way you wanted. You had what you thought were your 3 big horses available to you. And they couldn't get the job done. Max Scherzer on Friday night, whether it's, the injuries of the last couple of months or, the length of the season and so many innings pitched on that 38-year-old body, catching up to him. Or it's just the Padres have great players. They had 4 bombs off of him on Friday night, and the Mets, seemingly kept getting dealt left hooks that they could not get up from. And, their offense was not able to supply any of a threat, any of a challenge toward Yu Darvish that the Padres were doing to Max Scherzer. So, and, that what was confounding about this series is the way Buck Showalter was handling things. And I'll get to what he did last night in a minute or two. But why he's always got to play the man of mystery, always got to play this he's got to be the smartest human being in the room. Jacob deGrom, it should have been announced from the onset that he was starting Game 2 on Saturday night. Shouldn't have been this game of, we'll make that decision based on what the outcome of Game 1 is. it's almost like they were already looking ahead to the Dodgers. And as great as the Dodgers are, the San Diego Padres deserve a lot more respect than you were seemingly giving them coming into this series. And you weren't going to be fooling us. Now, whether it's you win game one or you lose game one, Jacob deGrom had to take the mound. Now, you weren't going to go through this weekend and with your season on line without the guy who's been your best pitcher for the last 6-7 years taking the mound at Citi Field at least one more time. And, for the most part, he lived up to the billing on Saturday. He finally got the Mets offense coming alive. The problem is the Padres kept on fighting, kept on, coming back every time the Mets took the lead early on. That's why, I don't blame what he did as far as, and I'm talking about Buck here, as far as going to Edwin Diaz in the 7th inning. Now, I wasn't watching the game, as I mentioned. I was out on Saturday night. But my mindset with that was, all right, he's not asking him to pitch the final 3 innings here. He's asking him to give him as many outs as possible without taking away potential availability for Sunday night. And at the same time hoping that while Diaz is shutting the Padres down, that the Mets offense comes to life. And you were able to get that. Problem is, then you had Ottavino start to try to make a mess of things, and you were forced to use Lugo on back-to-back nights, that something typically the Mets have not liked doing historically. But at least they got themselves to Sunday, but you're almost looking at it and you're saying, did Sunday really truly even happen? Did Sunday even exist? With the very quiet, very poor, very non-existent of the Mets offense in Sunday night's efforts, if you want to call that. Because for the first time in MLB history, you have a team lose a winner-take-all game at home, only recording 1 hit or less. And credit Joe Musgrove. Joe Musgrove, really good pitcher in his own right. But the Mets, their bats once again went silent, and it showed the difference between the Mets and the Padres. The Padres, you look at a lot of the damage that was going on here over this weekend was coming from the 7, 8, 9 spots in the order. They batted about 500 over this weekend. While the Mets, after you got past the Lindor, Alonso, McNeil, Nimmo portion of this lineup, you really weren't getting much. I mean, you saw Starling Marte back out there, and he was battling, but clearly the thumb was still an issue. And the rest of this lineup was a flat-out joke. It goes back to Billy Epler at the deadline, like I said last week, bringing in a lot of spare parts, but not, that big bat. And that big bat they could have used. He was on the other side of the field with Josh Bell coming up in big spots and getting the job done. You mix that with Chris Bassett and, what was, normally I wouldn't call a pitcher soft, but that clearly was a soft performance by him based on the fact that, after the game he's complaining about how New York's a tough place to pitch. Well, duh. I mean, I don't know why you keep bringing this up. This isn't the first time we've heard him say this all year. It's clear he psyched himself out. It wasn't a whole thing of, he couldn't hear the pitch comm thing in his hat. This was, the moment became too big for Chris Bassett, and he wilted under the pressure of the bright lights. Now, the other story that comes out of this game, as much as we want to, as baseball fans, as fair, objective fans, want to give Joe Musgrove credit, tip the cap, as well as if you're a Met fan, be pissed off and annoyed by the results of this series is the decision by Buck Showalter last night in the 6th inning, going out there and asking the umpires to check Joe Musgrove just because he was throwing harder and had a higher spin rate with his all of his pitches than he usually has averaged this year, which I, for the life of me, will never understand how they measure that, but I digress. And he came away kind of looking like a desperate man, a desperate manager with that act. Here you got a guy that we all know is a pretty good pitcher, has been dominant over his last handful of starts, pitching to an ERA of about half a run in that time frame. And you're going to be going out there in the middle of the game where your team is dead as a doornail, asking for that kind of review when the umpires check the pitchers multiple times throughout the game. I don't blame the Padres for then taunting the Mets dugout for Joe Musgrove being pissed off. You know what last night was? Why he was doing that? People bring up, they were seeing shiny stuff on his ears. I say this all the time. These analytics, all of these computer-generated stuff in baseball, it cannot measure the human heart. It cannot measure the intensity, the adrenaline that runs through somebody in the heat of the moment, in the heat of battle. Joe Musgrove, clearly, he had a better feel for the moment than did Chris Bassett. He went out there with a killer mindset. He went out there with hey, if this is the last game I pitch of this season, I'm going to let it fly and let things fall where they may. So, and we see that from pitchers all the time. In those big moments, they're able to step up and ask their body to do something that they normally don't do or don't do as often in the regular season, because in the postseason, it's all on the line. There was no tomorrow for the losing team in this. And that losing team happened to be the Mets. A Mets team that, their fan base is heartbroken because it was a fun team. It was a cute team to follow all year long. But at the end of the day, this is a team that the 101 wins covers up what was a lot of flaws with this baseball team. Covers up that the fact that there's got to be changes with this baseball team. Especially when you look at the fact that a majority of their pitching staff is free agents after this year. Bassett, Lugo, Walker, Carrasco, Diaz, May, Ottavino, and that's not even including DeGrom, who can opt out. Nimmo is the only guy of importance on their offense that is a free agent. That's probably someone that they will look heavily into and bring him back. But, outside of that or some kind of big trade, I think you're looking at a situation where you potentially bring, one of the, at least two of these starting pitchers back, one of the relievers. If you can't bring back Diaz, I think you definitely have to bring back bring back Lugo. You bring back at least one of DeGrom or Bassett, one of Walker and Carrasco, and then figure out the rest of the spots, whether it's through trade or through lower signings like 1-year deals. Because even Steve Cohen, even for him being the richest owner in this sport, he's even admitted that they're not going to go full-on drunken sailor mode. Now, after a couple, maybe that's comments or words just to say once your season's over, and maybe that changes in a couple of months' time. Maybe they go out there and make a big trade and sign Ohtani to a big extension after trading for him. Who knows? Who knows what their front office could be thinking? But you're not going to see this same team as instituted come back next year. They need to add some depth to this team so that you have guys available to pinch hit off the bench, better options than the likes of Naquin, Vogelback, and Darren Ruff. You're going to see hopefully for their sake, some of these prospects, whether it's Beatty, Alvarez, Vientos, one or two of them stick up here and be regular parts of this lineup. And hopefully for their sake, Max Scherzer is able to stay healthier than he was this past year and give them closer to 30 starts. Is that asking too much on a guy that's going to be 39 at some point next year? Remains to be seen. But it's going to be a different Mets team next year. That's why it's so frustrating for this fan base today. I said earlier, it was a fun year for them, and you were hoping that this ride ended in a different way rather than frustration and aggravation of a very quiet offensive downturn in your ballpark against a team that you won more games than in the Padres, rather than getting ready for a trip to LA, a trip to face the Dodgers in the NLDS. You're sitting there wondering what could have been if you would have just won one game in Atlanta last week, or not got swept by the Cubs in September, or won more games against the Pirates in the final month, a month that was supposed to be, up until the Braves series, one of the easiest schedules in the big leagues. Now you're sitting here thinking about what could have been and what does this team need to improve on and get better in next year so you can finally end your what will now be 37-year drought of not winning a World Series. All right, a lot I want to get to today. Going to mix in some football as we go on here. Some thoughts on both the Jets and the Giants, where they stand in their divisions, some questionable coaching decisions, poor Thursday night game, an absolutely atrocious call in the NFL yesterday that now, I don't know how the NFL can live with themselves on that, even for a regular season game, as well as mix in some more thoughts about the wild card round and the league division series as we roll along here. So plenty to get to in this week's podcast. So glad you could tune in, listen, watch, whatever format you're watching on this week. So at this time, as I usually do, please sit back, relax, put your feet up if you feel like it, and continue keeping it sports with M3.
I'll be back.
I'm not sure what was the worst thing that I saw this week. There were two things that really jump out that, quite frankly, boggle my mind when I saw them. One, of course, was the video that came out via TMZ from Golden State Warriors practice last week, in which Draymond Green knocked the living crap out of Jordan Poole. Listen, fights happen in practice all the time, so we quite frankly shouldn't be surprised about it. I think the only time you'd only hear about this kind of nonsense happening is baseball, and they really don't have quote-unquote practice, considering it's an everyday sport. But you hear about it happens sometimes in training camp in hockey, definitely in training camp in football, between teams, between guys on the same team. And I'm sure there's pushing and shoving that goes on in the heat of battle in NBA practices. But when you see something, it brings more of a light on it, and it has you taken back like, damn, And when you watch the video of this, it initially starts with them jawing back and forth, Draymond stepping up to Jordan Poole pushing him off, and then he's looking away, and Draymond just comes up right on him and decks him to a point where Poole's just laying there, and like, God, what could he have possibly said that set Draymond Green off that badly? And we know Draymond's an emotional guy, but that looked completely over the line. And remember, I'm a Draymond Green fan. I've always been a supporter of his, but I can't get behind him on this, especially you punch a guy that's not looking at you. It was an awful look for him, especially when you consider everything he's got going on. He's got a successful podcast. He's the first active NBA player that has a media deal. Remember, he works for TNT during the season when the Warriors are not playing. If he's available on Thursday nights, he's part of their broadcast team. And it's a bad look for a guy that has that kind of, jobs, that kind of obligations when he's not available or taken away by his main job as an NBA player. And clearly there's something more than just what Jordan Poole said going on here. That's why, rather than the team suspending him, he's stepping away for a while to work on issues within himself, hopefully calm the matter down and come back a better person. But it's just, you wonder how, you hope he gets some kind of help, because clearly something is mentally wrong here, and you don't want him going down some kind of dark path that is not just a hindrance or a hurt to others, but a hurt toward him, his personal self. But how's this going to affect this Warriors team? Because as great as Steph is, as great as Clay is, hopefully he's back to his old ways, his second year back from injury. Jordan Poole, an emerging star there. Now, you could make the argument that Draymond Green is the first or second most important player on that team. His ability to play defense at 4 different spots, the fact that he can be the point guard for this team late in the game and get Steph Curry off the ball handling. He's just been a very important, very key part of this team, winning 4 titles in the last 8 years, and now them looking to go on another run here, another chance at repeating. How's this going to affect this team? So, but most importantly, as I said, I hope he gets help he needs. But that's as far as bad off the court. Bad on the playing field. The worst thing I definitely saw this week as far as, on the field action was the nonsense that went down yesterday between the Bucks and the Falcons. Because here you have the Atlanta Falcons have been interesting. They've been kind of a scrappy, feisty team. They've been in pretty much every game they've played this year at the very end, that is. They've either had a big lead and blown it like they did against the Saints, or been down by big and worked their way back into the game, as we saw against the Rams a couple weeks ago, and now yesterday against the Buccaneers. They were down 21-0 heading into the fourth quarter and finally started to show some life here. It looked like they were going to get one more crack at things in the final couple minutes. It's a third down. They're down 21-15. Grady Jarrett's able to break through and get what looks like a sack on Brady on third down with about 3 minutes to go, give the Falcons the football back. And referee Jerome Boger throws the flag and calls a roughing the passer penalty. That I'm sitting there showing this on the big screen at MetLife. I'm looking, how the hell is that roughing the passer? How in the world can any human being look at that and say, that's roughing the passer. He wrapped his arms around Brady's waist and rolled with him to the ground. It wasn't like he picked him up and body slammed him like he was a pro wrestler. I mean, how else do you want him to tackle him? He didn't go at the head. He didn't go at his knees. He didn't pick him up and throw him down like a power bomb. This was as clean and textbook a tackle, a sack from a defensive lineman as you could possibly ask for. And listen, I know there's the camp of people, mostly Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans, they're saying, oh, if you're not happy about it, score more than 15 points, or don't wait till the fourth quarter for your offense to come alive. But it took any possible chance of like some end of game dramatics away from the Atlanta Falcons, because it gave the Buccaneers an automatic first down. The Falcons were down to only one timeout. And how do you look at, let's say the Falcons continue having a losing season here. Let's say, they're 2-3 right now. So let's say they finish 5-11, and or 5-12, excuse me. And Arthur Blank decides to make a change at the head coaching spot this year and fire Arthur Smith. How do you look at him and say, oops, sorry? Because maybe this kind of game could have been a momentum changer, could have been a rallying cry for the Atlanta Falcons, got their season completely turned around. And instead, you took away the opportunity for them from a possible W. And quite frankly, it's a shame. Now, the one thing that Tom Brady did get right this week, and I'm not talking about his personal life, is where on his podcast he was talking about the overall quality of football played so far this year in the NFL. And he said, quote, I think there's a lot of bad football from what I've watched. I've watched a lot of bad football. Poor quality of football, that's what I see. And it goes back to what I was talking about a couple of weeks ago. These teams, yesterday was like week one for a lot of these teams. They were in week one mode of NFL action because now they're officially into a full month of actual games being played. They treat the first 3-4 weeks of the year like the preseason these days because they're so terrified based on a couple of players that have gotten injured in the preseason over the last couple of years, where I look at it and shake my head saying, you got to play these guys at least a couple of reps, at least a couple of series in the preseason. Get them the feel for football. They are not ready for week 1, 2, or 3 yet when those games roll around based on how these front offices and coaching staffs treat late July into August these days. That's why we're seeing such poor quality play. These offensive linemen, when you have new offensive lines, makeshift offensive lines, are not together, do not have a cohesiveness. You're seeing a lot of sloppy play offensively. You look at it, like yesterday continued where it was hit and miss with the Green Bay Packers offense out in London. Some of these teams that you weren't expecting much from, you're seeing good offense from them, like Seattle, because Geno Smith had to compete to get his spot in August. So he's already been in an NFL playing mindset for about 2 months now. He truly feels like he's in week 5. Both him and the Saints, why they've played well offensively, is they've had competitions. They had battles for spots in the preseason that guys had to earn their keep. So that's why you're seeing Geno Smith off to a good start. You're seeing Taysom Hill have a fantastic day with 4 touchdowns on his own. Those teams who take the preseason seriously are the ones that right now have the most cohesive offense. That's why you look at what's going on in Denver and you wonder, what the hell were they doing in training camp? What the hell were they doing in the preseason? And to be fair, my guy Russell Wilson has not looked good. He's, quite frankly, looked like, he's more toward the back half of his career than the front half. And remember, this is a guy that he's still, 33, 34 years of age? He's my age. Now, he's right here in the same time frame of life as I am. And I know he's got a lot more battle scars on him from playing 10 years in the NFL than I do. But you're not seeing the same Russ that you did in Seattle now with the Denver Broncos. And some of it is due to awful decision-making by Nathaniel Hackett. But when you watch Russ on Thursday night and you're seeing some of the stuff that he's doing in the fourth quarter with as bad of interceptions as you could ask for, one throwing to Hamler in the end zone early in the quarter when it looked like they were in great position to really put their foots on the Colts' necks. And then late in the game, all you needed to do was get the Atlanta Falcons to use up their timeouts. You had a 3-point lead. You were going to win a very ugly, hard-to-watch game 9-6. And he throws a pick to Stephon Gilmore with reasonable enough field position for even Matt Ryan to drive them down to set up a game-tying field goal, force overtime. And then in overtime, he completely whiffs. He has the ball in his hands with a chance to win the game and misses Cortland Sutton on that 4th and 1 attempt at the Indy 5-yard line. And I respect the fact that they didn't just take the field goal there. They tried to go for the win because the easy call would have been, go for the field goal. And at worst, you have a 12-12 tie. Something that, quite frankly, both these teams deserve to have be the outcome, deserve to have be the finish of this game when you consider how much they wasted our times with this game on Thursday night. But it's not been a great start to the season for Nathaniel Hackett, Russell Wilson, or the Broncos all in general, especially when you look around that division. You look at that division, and it remains to be seen what Kansas City and Oakland do tonight. But Kansas City, for the most part, their offense has been on lockdown. The Chargers, each and every single week, Herbert has been lights out. No matter if he's battling injury, if he's without teammates, he's been giving his team a shot each and every week. It's his head coach, Brandon Staley, who needs to get his head out of his rear end and stop going for all these damn fourth downs. And yesterday, he almost cost them with the fact that he calls for a 4th and 1 play on his own 46-yard line with about a minute and change left, trying to be the smartest guy in the room. When that failed, it left the Browns opportunity to come down and win the game on a walk-off field goal, and they have to be counting their lucky stars that for the second time in the last 3 weeks, Cade York screwed up a late-game special teams play, missing a game-winning field goal with a few seconds to go. But the Wilson, whether he's battling some kind of injury or not, or Nathaniel Hackett and him aren't seeing eye to eye, or it's still the rookie growing pains as a head coach for Nathaniel Hackett, Broncos got to get their heads out of their rear ends sooner rather than later if they want to stay in the mix for the AFC West and potentially an AFC wildcard spot. It's still early. There's still time for them to get going. But as we say all the time in sports, it can get very late, very early. You don't want that happening to you when there's only 12 games left now in this season. All right, got to take another break here. Come back on the other side. Look at what some of the locals did yesterday. No, not just Jets and Giants, but an exciting day as it was for both the Bills and the Eagles as well. Continue keeping it sports with M3.
I'll be back.
Connecticut School of Broadcasting founder Dick Robinson.
You know, the media business has changed a lot since we opened our doors in 1964. Now media content is everywhere. On air, online, on the go. More than ever, companies are looking for people to help drive this new media.
At Connecticut School of Broadcasting, you'll get hands-on training on the latest software and equipment in a matter of months, not years. Connecticut School of Broadcasting has placed thousands of grads in broadcast media careers.
It's all about versatility. You see, at a radio station, if you also know how to shoot, edit, and post videos, you become a pretty hot commodity. That's the training you get at Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
Connecticut School of Broadcasting with locations up and down the East Coast from Massachusetts to Miami. Call 1-800-TV-RADIO or log on to GoCSB.com. Connecticut School of Broadcasting, the nation's oldest and largest group of broadcast media schools. Redefining training in radio, TV, and new media. Get trained. Get connected. 1-800-TV-RADIO.
I hope for the most part that all of you who are either listening or watching this podcast have been able to understand what I've been saying this week. As you can tell, I've had a raspy voice from events that I attended over the weekend, and when I do this podcast each and every single week, I try to be as clear and coherent as possible and as understandable as possible when I talk to you guys. Has been a little bit of a battle with this raspy voice I'm currently dealing with here, but hey, never apologize for having fun, as long as it's not anything harmful to you personally, disrespectful to anyone you know or anyone in general when it comes to religious or potentially race stuff, as long as it doesn't affect any of that or disrespectful in any way, have at it. You know, you only get one life here, people. Live it up. And that's exactly what the two football teams have been allowing their in this area have been allowing their fan bases to do so far this season, is live it up, enjoy life, be happy to be a football fan, because it's I'll be totally transparent and honest here. I did not think we would be sitting here second Monday of October and talking about the New York Jets and New York Giants preparing themselves for relevant months of the month of October. Now, you look at the Giants coming into this year with so many questions about the quarterback in Daniel Jones, a rookie head coach in Brian Daboll, the fact that you weren't sure about a lot of pieces in this offense. How was this offense going to be run? They were a team that was, quite frankly, lacking in talent. And the last couple of weeks, they've been lacking in wide receivers. I mean, Kadarius Toney's been in and out of the lineup. Kenny Golladay, let's face it, he's only around to get a paycheck these days. And, the Giants and him are both counting the days until that marriage can be broken apart without it costing the Giants too much on the cap, because he's been an awful, embarrassing signing. Thank you, Dave Gettleman. But even with all that happening, we sit here 5 weeks into the season, and the Giants are 4-1. I mean, there's an argument to be made that they could be 5-0, but hey, you don't want to get too greedy. And yesterday, for them to go on the road and defeat the Green Bay Packers is a great win. Now, you do have to take into a little bit a caveat here. They did not have to face the sometimes daunting effects that is the frozen tundra in Lambeau Field, because the game was taking place at 9:30 London time across the pond. So both teams were essentially playing a neutral site game here, if you're being perfectly honest here. And it would have been very easy for the Giants to just pack this game in earlier. And they were down 20-10 at halftime, weren't getting much going with this offense. But their defense, which has been really good this year, even despite some injuries, especially with Leonard Williams, stepped up big time in the second half. And the only points that the Packers were able to score in that second half were on the late safety that the Giants took to run out the clock there a little bit. They were even getting a ton of pressure on Rodgers late in this game, so much that he wasn't able to get that final heave off. How many times have we seen it in his career where Aaron Rodgers will end the night with one of those big Hail Marys, and somehow, some way, some nondescript wide receiver comes down with it for a walk-off win for him. We've seen it a bunch of times throughout his career. But the Giants were able to get enough pressure on him and not allow that one final opportunity. And like I said, you look at the Giants, they're running out there, a bunch of ham and eggers at wide receiver right now. The only respectable weapons that Daniel Jones has to work with are Slayton and Barkley. And Slayton, he even missed some time in this game. You thought that he was going to give some alarm, some pause to this good vibe, this good momentum for the Giants by leaving with that shoulder injury. But he was able to come back in and finish this game. And now you're sitting here, even despite what the Twitter universe wants to say, after that game, the words worst 4-1 team were trending across Twitter, and of course everyone was talking about them. But hey, don't apologize about winning. Be excited. Be happy. Live it up. Live in the moment. You're building yourself up enough breathing room right now that if there is a moment where things start to falter, and that moment will come, where you're not going 16-1. I still question whether this team is going to be a 10-win team or be a playoff kind of team when it's all said and done. But you've built yourself up enough that you wouldn't be, even if you went on a 2-3 game slide, that you wouldn't be completely out of the mix of things, and you'd be able to turn things around much easier. Wouldn't have the pressure of the world on you, thinking that, we've got a lot of making up to do. You've built yourself a solid foundation to start this season, and doing it with a lot of guys that, are not Joe Shione or not Brian Daboll guys. As they start to integrate such a change up this roster, not just this year, but in the years to come, this kind of season is a good building block for the Giants and getting their franchise back to true respectability. And this good start, it's allowed them to keep pace with what were thought to be, the big boys in the NFC East. And I think everyone knew that the Washington Commanders would be an outright disaster, and that Carson Wentz was going to Carson Wentz the place up. But you're looking up and you're seeing both Dallas at 4-1, now winning their fourth straight yesterday, thanks to another dominant defensive performance in LA against the Rams. And Micah Parsons continuing to look like the runaway candidate for Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, when you win a game with your quarterback only throwing for 100 yards, it shows that, a lot of things are going right for you. And then you look at what's going on in Philly as the Eagles are off to an astounding 5-0 start after yesterday's tug-of-war battle in Arizona that, if Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury had a little better awareness, a little bit better read on the feel of the game, maybe we'd be talking about an overtime game here. Because you look at it, in the final couple minutes of that game, you wonder what the hell is Kyler Murray thinking. He's in the final drive of decision making. It should tell all you need to know about why originally the Arizona Cardinals put in a clause in Murray's contract that he had to have 4 hours of independent study each week. Because the Cardinals had a first down at Philly's 34-yard line with about 30 seconds to go. Out of timeouts here. Murray spikes the ball. Okay, fine, you stop the clock there. But then on second down, he's got a clear run right up the middle, and he slides 1 yard before the first down marker, making it 3rd and 1, and he once again spikes the football rather than running a play there. And I get there's the whole concern about, the clock running out before setting up for another spike. But like we saw what happened to Dallas last year in the postseason. But you had 1 yard to gain, and you slide too early. He's usually got a better feel for, as far as field awareness is concerned there. And then you see Matt Amendola, because they spiked it on 3rd down, they had to go right for the field goal there. And Matt Amendola did Matt Amendola things and missed a game-tying field goal that kept the Eagles' undefeated run alive. And now, if you're the Giants, if you play your cards right, now you look at it, you're playing the Ravens next week. And the Ravens just eked one by last night against the Bengals on Sunday Night Football. I mean, just barely squeaked this one out. Neither team really rewrote the record books with how they played offense in this game. But if you're the Giants, you look at the Ravens and you say, yeah, they got a very good defense, but so do we. If we can at least not let Lamar destroy the game, we could be sitting here a week from now with the Giants in first place in the division, because the Eagles and Cowboys, they play on Sunday night. Cowboys knock off the Eagles. All three of these teams could be 5-1 a week from today. And if you're the Giants and you're in a 3-way tie for first place in the NFC East 6 weeks into the season, what more can you ask for? You had no expectations, no high level of belief in this team coming into the season. And now a chance to be in first place in the final weeks or the first several weeks of the year. Nothing more you can ask for. All you ask for your team, give us a shot. Give us a reason to believe. No, not think weird, kooky stuff. I think it's too early for the weird, kooky thoughts. That's more of if you get into December and you're something like 9-3, and you're staring the postseason down. or you get into January and you're 10-4 or 10-3, and you're 2 weeks away from potentially making the postseason. Then you can start thinking weird stuff. Then you can start thinking, what do we have here? But right now, you'd be excited. You'd be happy. Your team's off to the great start. And you, once again, never, and I mean never, apologize about winning. The same thing goes for my Jets. I'm sitting there at MetLife yesterday, and let's face it was 50-50 as far as the fan base is concerned. It was a packed crowd, but you could see a lot of teal in that crowd, a lot of orange in that crowd. When the Dolphins were doing things early and starting to come back into the game after the Jets had the early 12-0 lead, you could hear the Dolphin fans. They were alive, they were loud, they were rambunctious, just like the Jet fans were. Now you start to have that sense of the old rivalry that these two fan bases used to have. But finally, the Jets were able to get that signature win at home. And maybe the word signature win is too strong, too early. But it had been 3 years since they beat a division opponent. The last time they won a division game was against these Dolphins in December of 2019, when Brian Flores was still the head coach of this team. It's the first time that the Jets have been over 500 in over 5 years after 5 games. And you're looking at this team, you're excited as all hell with what you're seeing from this New York Jets squad. First off, Sauce Gardner set the tone early on when he knocked Teddy Bridgewater out of the game with that safety in the end zone that left Teddy unable to continue. And you have some guy named Thompson come in, and you could clearly see that the Dolphins had no confidence in this guy throwing the football down the field. That's why a lot of their offense was runs right up the middle or short checkdowns to either Waddle or Hill, although that they were getting put in lockdown mode if they had to go up against Sauce. But you saw the Jets defense, even though it bent a bit there, allowed Miami to get back in the game, they were able to lock things down, were able to get pressure when necessary. I mean, John Franklin Myers and Carl Lawson off the edges made life tough for this kid when he had to drop back. They had more hits on the quarterback than the Dolphins had altogether against Zach Wilson. And offensively, you're looking at the Jets here. This is now 6 out of the last 7 games in which Zach Wilson does not have a turnover. And a lot of that is because Zach is not forcing it anymore. Zach is not going out there trying to play this like it's Madden, the video game. He's taking what comes to him. And he's taking advantage of the fact that he has 2 running backs that can catch the football and run within their own right. We knew Michael Carter could do that last year, but Breece Hall has added a level of electricity, a level of excitement to this offense, so that even when you're not able to take the shots with Corey Davis, with Garrett Wilson, or Elijah Moore, who was relatively quiet yesterday, you have these running backs that can be those options for you, that even if something looks like a little check down, they're able to explode and make it into big chunk plays. All game long, it seemed like Breece Hall was breaking off big long runs or runs after the catch and setting up Michael Carter for 1 to 2 yard touchdowns. These guys wreaked havoc, had a true impact on the game yesterday, and they got helped out by the fact that their offensive line was stronger than it's been in recent weeks. He finally got Dwayne Brown back off the IR, which never thought we were going to see him again. And then you saw the continued thing of Elijah Vera Tucker, his versatility, his ability to move around in that offensive line and play show that he can play 4 different spots on there was a huge help for this team. And now we're sitting here with the Jets set to go to Green Bay next week, with them over 500 after 5 weeks for the first time in a long time. You start, as I said, you don't start thinking kooky things, but if you're both a Jets and a Giants fan today, you're happy. You're excited. You're realizing that, hey, going into Halloween, we've got relevant football in this area for the first time in a long time. It's not just, oh, we're looking up at the Eagles if you're a Giants fan. You're not just looking up at the Buffalo Bills as they have another video game-like performance against the Steelers. And congrats to anyone who was betting or had Josh Allen and Gabe Davis in fantasy football in the first half yesterday with the shows that they put on. But with both the Jets and Giants, live in the moment, live it up, be happy, be excited that you have relevant football here, with both teams, both fan bases, and it's something we have not been able to say a lot in the last decade. All right, going to take another break here, come back on the other side, and finish things up. Continue keeping it sports with M3.
I'll be back.
I didn't know whether I was going to be able to fit this next story in. Didn't know if there was going to be enough time in the podcast this week, but I guess I'll give a minute or two of thought on this one that is... No, I don't know if I should take sides on this, because quite frankly, neither of these guys ever played for the franchise I root for, the Brooklyn Nets, and while I have a great amount of respect for both of them, I, for the life of me, cannot understand, I don't know if you want to call it a feud, a rivalry, beef, whatever it is, but whatever we're calling this that's going on between LeBron James and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. It quite frankly, it borderlines on like confounding, confusing, because as we all know, LeBron is about to pass Kareem this year for the all-time scoring record. Now, if he continues the pace he's been on over the course of his career, an average of over 27 points a game, which he's shown no signs that that won't happen, he would only need about 49 games this year to pass Kareem. And I'm sure it's going to be a phenomenal moment, a moment that you see the game get stopped and a long, well-deserved standing ovation for LeBron when he completes this feat. But there's been this beef between these two, mostly coming from seemingly Kareem the last couple of years, that I don't know if it's about potential envy or jealousness that LeBron's about to break this, or if it's just off of personal differences and philosophy in life. But I'm surprised that this is catching the light of day publicly so much. Personally, I wish for the two of them's sake that they would keep it in-house and talk about it like men rather than it be this he said, she said kind of thing throughout the media, because it popped up once again last week when LeBron was asked about chasing Kareem's scoring record and if they have a relationship, and LeBron very unemotionally goes, no thoughts and no relationships. And he would then expand upon that and saying, I think the money quote here, after he talks about how cool it would be to break this record, saying, quote, obviously Kareem has had his differences with some of my views and some of the things I do. But at the end of the day, to be able to be in the same breath as the guy that wore this same uniform, a guy that was a staple of this franchise, I think is super duper dope just to be in that conversation. No, why does it have to be about that between these two so publicly? No, and I don't blame LeBron for coming out and making those comments, because Kareem started this with the comments that he had against LeBron. Yeah, it's okay for two grown men that are in different generations from the same profession to not have a close relationship. I mean, LeBron and Michael don't have exactly a close relationship. LeBron and Kobe didn't have a close relationship, and they were contemporaries. They played a majority of each other's careers together, but in the couple of years before Kobe's unfortunate passing, and they started to develop a relationship and develop a brotherly-like bond. But Kareem is the one that has started this, came out first with the shots toward LeBron, saying that LeBron, his views of LeBron over his career, some of the things he's done, he should be embarrassed about, saying that him as an early advocate for the COVID-19 vaccines, he was criticizing LeBron on social media, equating COVID-19 to the flu and the common cold. Remember, LeBron posted that meme of the three Spider-Men, one of them being COVID, one being the flu, and one being the common cold, all pointing the finger at each other. It's a common meme or GIF or whatever you want to call that on social media. But no, I don't understand why he had to be so public about it. If you have a problem with what the guy said, rather than throw it out there in the media, have a chat with him, talk with him. Hey, listen, I don't think that was cool. I want to hear your view about that. I want to hear your feelings about that so I can get a better gauge on what you were thinking. Are you serious about this, or are you just trying to pass that along as a poor, what seems like in Kareem's mind, a poor received joke? And he said that things like that are a blow to his worthy legacy. And now that unless you see LeBron commit some kind of act of violence toward a woman or child, or hurt or kill somebody, or hurt or kill an animal, I don't know how you could say that something is a blow to the great legacy he's built in the NBA, something off the court like that. Well, I may disagree with his decision to post that meme. It shouldn't affect who he is as a basketball player. And he gave him high credit for what he does with that I Promise school, but he would come out and say some of the things he's done and said are really beneath him, as far as I see, versus some of the great things he's done, standing on both sides of the fences almost. It makes it hard for me to accept that. When he's committed himself to a different take on everything, it's hard to figure out where he stands. You got to check him out every time. Have the talk with him. Have a conversation with him. Ask his opinion on this. Don't make it a media conversation, because then, like I said, it turns into a whole big he said, she said thing that we're talking about every single day, that it's not an us issue. It's a between you two grown men who have two seemingly different views on certain stuff should be able to sit down and have a chat, have a conversation about it without bringing other people into it. At least that's the way I would have handled it, or no, I've handled personal griefs in the past. All right, so we're now on to the league division series in Major League Baseball, as the field has whittled down from starting at 12 teams to now you get only 8 teams as the 1 and 2 seeds in both leagues. The Dodgers, Braves in the National League, and the Astros and Yankees, respectively, in the American League, get back into the play of things here. And you can look at it as one of two ways. Rest, and you got to line up your starting rotation the way you wanted, or rust as you're going up against, you have 3 teams here coming into this next round that, they got an extra day off based on sweeps, but they're riding high. They're riding momentum. You look at the Mariners, they're riding high on the fact that Castillo was dominant in his first postseason start, and they were able to work their way back from an 8-1 deficit against the Blue Jays on Saturday afternoon to break Toronto's heart in a 10-9 win. I mean, you started to see it slowly but surely happen in the 6th with the Carlos Santana 3-run homer that got them back in the mix of things. Then they tied the game on the double by J.P. Crawford in the 8th before Adam Frazier gave him the lead in the 9th inning. Allows them to advance in the postseason, get their first postseason wins in over 21 years, and now have sitting and waiting for them the 1 seed, the Houston Astros. Whereas, the Indians, it's weird, that they won this series based on great pitching and timely hitting, something you need in the postseason. But whether it was the Rays pitching staff or just them lacking firepower, their offense left a lot to be desired in this series. I mean, you got great performances by Shane Bieber and Tristan McKenzie, but you're not going to be able to go back to either one of those guys until games 2 and 3, respectively here. And now you're going up against a Yankee team that started to wake up offensively in the last couple of weeks. So we'll see how these teams handle, the rust versus rust aspect of things, and whether these hot weekends by both the Guardians and the Mariners can carry over here into the next round. Now, the Phillies, they also got a sweep here, but you're going to be looking at, based on the schedule here, them having to wait till Friday to get either of their top 2 guys back in the series, unless they are planning on Zach Wheeler going on short rest to start this series. And you look at the way that they did the scheduling for this. It's kind of confounding, kind of weird as far as I'm concerned. They've never done this before with the League Division Series, but you have, in the NL side of things, game 1 and 2 will be on Tuesday and Wednesday. Then Thursday's an off day. And then games 3 through 5, if they go the full 5, will be Saturday through Sunday. No day off there, no travel day. So you'll be going potentially from playing a game 4 in one series one night to playing a game 5 back in the original series the next day. And the only thing that helps here is the fact that on that side of things, the 2 West Coast teams are playing each other, and the 2 East Coast teams are playing each other. And, no, it's not much of a travel on the AL side of things either, but theirs is just as weird. You look at Game 1 on Tuesday, then an off day on Wednesday, Game 2 on Thursday, Friday's another off day before Games 3 through 5, if it goes the full length, would be Saturday through Monday with no day to travel for the going from potentially Cleveland back to New York as well as Seattle back to Houston. And those are not the worst trips in the world, at least the Cleveland back to New York kind of thing, but I don't understand the need to change things up like that. You should have just done Game 1, 2, day off, Game 3, 4, if necessary, day off, then Game 5. You had the time to get it in. And it's the same amount of off days in the series as it is. I mean, people who have a much higher pay grade than me clearly somehow, some way thought that this was a smart idea how to do things here. To me, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but hey, I'm just in it to hopefully watch our New York Yankees win another championship. Continue the momentum, the good vibes after this week of Aaron Judge finally hitting home run number 62 and setting a new single-season record in the American League and in Yankee franchise history. It's going to be fun here. It's not going to be easy. Wasn't going to be easy no matter who the opponent is. But it's going to be fun to watch this series and these series all together. And I'm looking forward to getting it started. After watching 6 months of your team play, now going almost a week before they play a playoff game, kind of had me wondering, all right, what do I do? What do I watch on TV tonight? But thankfully, it's finally all going to get started tomorrow, and hopefully things break right. It's been a long time for this franchise since they won championship number 27. And I know it's easy to say, oh, you've seen 5 titles in your lifetime. The team's won 27 in their franchise history, but of the teams I root for, the Devils, the Brooklyn Nets, the Jets, as much as I want to see them win a Super Bowl, the Yankees are my favorite team. The Yankees are number one for me, and hopefully this is finally the year for them to get off the schneid for both getting past their postseason demon the last couple of years of the Houston Astros and potentially winning their first World Series championship since 2009. And that, my friends, was Keeping It Sports with M3 for Monday, October 10th, 2022. Everyone, please have a great night. Have a fun, safe, healthy, happy week, whatever you may be doing. And I'll talk to you guys again, same time next week. Until then, peace.
We have to go. Good night, everybody.
I have had enough of you!
Thank you for all the fun. Thank you. Hey, shut up, will you?
I don't want to see you, I don't want to hear you, and I don't want to smell you. Now leave. I'll be back.